up Volume 2 at some point to read. And then I read Lock and Key.
Soon to be a television series.
Yeah, which got picked up. Chew actually did too. I'm not sure if it was TV or movie, but it got picked up for something.
I think it's TV too. I think it's a cable.
So Lock and Key, which is another one that I started to read it a while ago because I had quite a few people tell me that I would really enjoy it, and I did. It's it's great. It's centers around a house in Lovecraft, Massachusetts, called the Key House. And this house is this big, gorgeous, Gothic mansion that has magical doors and magical keys that you can, insert a key into a door and you walk through that door and it turns you into a ghost. Or there's another key that you walk through the door and it turns you into, it changes your sex. So if you're a girl, it turns you into a boy, and vice versa. There's the key that you open the door and you walk through it and you can go anywhere in the world, whatever you're thinking of in your mind, that's where you go. And 3 kids move in there with their mom after their dad has been killed. And it's dark. There's a lot of really dark stuff going on. There's a very sinister feel throughout it all that you just kind of know that something that bad things are on the horizon, but at the same time it's really, there's some very sweet interactions between the 3 kids.
That's nice.
There's some really nice moments of just the kids trying to fit in and trying to cope with what's happened to them and trying to be normal. And one thing I really like is that a lot of it is told through the eyes of the little boy, the youngest of the 3 kids. And he just has, I think, Joe Hill manages to really capture that kind of childlike wonder and innocence, so that even when there's really dark things going on, it doesn't kind of go too far into this just dark, horrible place. And it's really creative, and I really like the idea that's and the world that's been set up of these keys that can open the doors.
Both Lock and Key and Chew are two series that I've been meaning to look at myself. So now that the trade paperbacks are here, I have no excuse.
And art-wise, Gabriel Rodriguez, I think he's a great artist. He draws. One thing I noticed that he draws really well with his characters are the eyes. He tends to draw the eyes a little bit bigger, kind of like anime style, but not quite that exaggerated. But all of his characters, the eyes are the first thing you notice, and they're very emotive. Like you really can see what the characters are feeling and how they're reacting through their whole face, but you notice the eyes first, and that's something that just really gripped me about it. That just he drew their eyes very, very beautifully and very emotively.
Cool.
The color, I have to admit, I don't actually. I'm looking through it right now again. I had some issues with. I just felt like the colorist. It looks very muddy at times. Like there's a lot of the colors are not very distinct, and it's quite muddied. And I think they had a little bit too much fun with the Photoshop gradient tool. But it wasn't. It wasn't a big deal. It's not like it took away from the story for me, but I just think if I were coloring it, I would have done it differently, but that's how it is with any artist. We always have our own ways of doing things. So that was Lock and Key. And then the third one I read was Scalped, Volume 1 by Jason Aaron, art by R.M. Guerra. And this is one that I have to admit, it was another one that actually a person that I talked to at Comic-Con last year really recommended it to me and said that I should read it. And then I read the description and I was kind of like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't sound that interesting to me. It takes place on an Indian reservation. And dealing with, it paints just a dismal picture of this Indian reservation. And I know
which may be fairly accurate.
It's probably
having never
a very
been to one.
accurate picture. It's this Prairie Rose Indian Reservation, which has the highest rate of alcoholism in the nation, and it's abject poverty. I think at one point they mentioned that the average income for residents is less than $3,000 a year.
Wow.
So it just paints this just dismal picture of this place. And the main character, Dashiell Badhorse, comes back after running away when he was 13. After getting off the reservation, he comes back, and he's a tribal cop. And he's got a big dark secret that is revealed at the end of the first issue. And it shows the corruption. There's a casino that's about to open up, and you've got the factions that think the casino is great and are fighting for it, but then you have the people that are fighting against it, saying that it's corrupting the traditional tribal values. It deals with drug running and meth labs and police corruption and I guess it wouldn't be the mob, but whatever the kind of equivalent of
organized crime in the Indian community.
And there's this over all of it. There's this Native American mysticism and mythology.
Which really fascinates me. I've always been fascinated by
and there's this character
mythology
that
spirituality.
Is right now sort of just a watcher on horseback that we see him observing and making comments about the thunder beings, and a shitstorm is coming, and it's been predicted, but we don't quite know yet who he is and what his role is. So that I like I said, I honestly, when I first was recommended to me and I read the description, I was like, I don't know, that doesn't sound super interesting to me. But one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, reading all the Eisner nominees, is because I wanted it to force me to read books kind of outside of my comfort zone and outside of what I would normally pick. And I am really glad I read it. I think it's great. It's really gripping. It's really intense. The artist has a very sketchy style, a lot of inking, a lot of blacks, a lot of very kind of sketchy lines, a lot of movement, which really fits the story really well, because this is a dark, gritty story taking place in a dismal area, and I think the art really reflected that. The one criticism I would make is that sometimes, for me personally, just the very sketchy style and very shadowed, kind of frenetic inking made it hard for me to tell characters apart. Yeah. But overall, I think it was really effective. And the writer does a lot of playing with timelines where you'll kind of jump back and forth between past and present, and and as the current timeline is progressing, we also jump back to the past, and we start to get little snippets of what happened in Dashiell's past and why he's the way he is now, and how the events that happened 15 years ago, 20 years ago, are still are very important to the events that are happening now, and it's really woven together. I think these different timelines and different stories are woven together really, really effectively.
Sounds good. So is this another one that you would consider keeping up with?
Yeah, I'm curious to read what's next. I mean, the trade ends, the last issue ends on a major cliffhanger. I mean, it's a big, shocking thing that happens at the end of this trade. So I'm definitely curious to read the fallout from what happens at the end.
Sure. So,
yeah, those are the ones I read. I'll be reading this week. To talk about next week, I will be reading Morning Glories, 20th Century Boys, and Echo.
All right. So speaking about art and about if you, at one point you had said, if it were me, and speaking of if it were you, and you mentioned that Scalped was a recommendation from Comic-Con. So you have been working on your own art that I believe will be appearing on comicscornerpodcast.com momentarily.
Yes, I will post it. I did just for fun. Comic-Con has their souvenir book every year that deals with the themes that are Comic-Con has its themes each year, and they accept submissions for art and articles. And so I thought, hey, why not submit something? So I spent the last couple weeks actually off and on, because I only had time to work on it in fits and starts, doing a piece for the Fantastic Four's 50th anniversary, which is one of the Comic-Con themes. So I did a Fantastic Four piece.
That was a little bit of an irony now that they're gone.
I know, but in honor of their 50-year run,
that they get their spot in the Comic-Con souvenir guide.
So I had fun doing a Fantastic Four piece, and I'll post it on Comics Corner so you all can see it. I'm proud of it. I think any artist has the critical eye of looking at it, going, I should have changed that. But there comes a point where you've worked and worked and worked a piece so much that you just have to say it's done. And move on. So, sure. So I submitted it. We'll see. Hopefully it shows up in the souvenir book. And, I'll post it online for everyone to see.
So for those of you who haven't heard it, I think the 3 times now I've mentioned it, the website for the podcast is comicscornerpodcast.com. You can follow us on Twitter at comicspodcast. That's, twitter.com/comicspodcast. And there's also a Facebook fan page, which when we get enough fans, we will actually get a username, and then I can give you that on Facebook.
Right now, just do a search on Facebook for Comics Corner, and it'll come up.
Yeah, so that is it for this one. We're done with Comics Corner podcast number 6.
Yeah, so thank you for listening once again. If you like the podcast, an awesome thing that you could do is to go on to iTunes and give us a rating, write a review. We really appreciate it. Like we said, we love to hear from you. If you want to discuss something further that we talked about in the podcast, if you want to tell us how wrong we are about something, if you have suggestions for things you would like us to review or talk about in future podcasts, or if you just want to tell us how awesome we are,
we'll take it. We'll take it.
We would love to hear from you either.
And by the way, one of the things that I do just because I'm anal like that is I always make these enhanced podcasts. So if you're actually in iTunes, you'll see the little pictures change. But moreover, on the menu, you'll notice a chapter menu. So you can actually skip to the specific things that we're talking about, and you don't have to listen to the whole thing if you just want to go back later and say, wait a minute, what was that Eisner comic that Michelle was talking about? I don't remember. You don't have to listen to, me yammer on about Batman and his gyre. You can just go right there.
Or if you want to put it on an endless loop, so you just would like to hear me talk about the Eisner comics over and over and over and over, you can do that.
You can. So thank you again for listening.
Yep. And until next time.
Until next time.